Yes. Okay. Well, welcome. I'm actually going to introduce myself and my coworkers here. So my name is Reese Wilson, and I am a health intervention specialist with Chestnut Health Systems. We also have Grace Irving and Jessica Johnson. We all are working with Chestnut in very similar capacities where we're out in the community doing work. And part of this series is for us to be able to bring some of that information and training to you guys. So when you fill out that feedback form, please give us more feedback. Let us know about new things you want to see, things you like, things that you would change or make better from our trainings, right? I am actually going to introduce our speaker today, who is Jay Hughes. Um, he is a influential community leader with a unique path to success shaped by 18 years of incarceration. As the owner of Committed Consulting LLC, he excels at simplifying complex concepts in addiction, mental health, and recovery, making them clear and compelling. An engaging presenter and content expert, Jay is a certified peer specialist in addiction disease and mental health, as well as a TEDx coach. He envisions a world where recovery is the standard for everyone. Currently, he resides in Atlanta, Georgia, and Jay enjoys exercise, kickboxing, and cheesecake. I agree on the cheesecake.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. So just a remix of what you just said, y'all. I got the credentials, but more importantly, I got a story or two that's going to come up. And as a disclaimer, I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm not a therapist, I'm just a person with a microphone, a little bit of training, and a willingness to be honest about what I've gotten wrong. So we're going to kind of get into both today. All right. And this is the one of the best biopics I could find of myself. So y'all got I couldn't get nobody to take a new one. So I figure I'd go back in time. All right, you all. So let's get into it a little bit. So before we're gonna spend about the next hour and a half of power together, 90 minutes, talking about trauma and what it is, how it shows up in kids and grown folks, and what to do about it without sounding like a textbook, robot. I'm not here to fix nobody because ain't nobody broke. And we're going to learn how to just simply show up together. That's the bar. That's the bar. All right. As a disclaimer, I just want to know that some of the conversations that we're going to be having today, some of the things I'm going to talk about, it could activate. Notice I didn't say trigger because everything is not triggering. I like to use the word activate because sometimes trigger can have a negative connotation because every time something disturbs you, you're not triggered. Sometimes it can be activating. So some of the things we may talk about maybe can activate, especially when we're talking about kids and things of that nature that can be professional as well as personal. So just make sure I don't have anything graphic or anything like that I'm going to show you. So if you need to walk away and come back, there's no wrong way to be in this room. If you need a person right now, 988, you can call that. The suicide crisis line, lifeline. There's a whole lot of resources. So please take care of yourself. The SAMHSA helpline, there's a plenty of resources that you can call and just simply take care of yourself doing this interaction. So before we get to going, follow the instruction, please. So don't go all at once. Don't go all at once. When I say go, go. So I need you to, in the prompt, right? Your first name, you already did that. I want you to just talk about one thing that you're hungry for. It don't have to be food. It could be sleep. It could be a vacation. It could be to get off this train. I'm hungry for Jay to hurry up. So when I count to three, I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, go. Drop in the chat what you're hungry for. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Coffee, sunshine, balance, vacation, dessert, the end of the school year, sunshine, sleep, peace, uh, cut, conquer the world, the beach, action, growth, balance. A CRSS job. Okay, I'll send you out to that. CCS, somebody give her a job. Give Martin a job. Give Martin a job, somebody. Financial freedom. I'm with you on that. Because everything's so high, I can't afford to buy a mosquito tuxedo. Everything is tight out here right now. So I'm with you. Retirement, I'm with you on that too. Someone else to do my laundry. Yes, I feel like with laundry, you ain't gonna do nothing but wear it again. I don't know why you should fold it. Just take it out and put it back on as you go. I'm with you. Hungry for life. So thank you so much for that. Like we got some hungry people in the chat. So thank you so much for that. So welcome everybody. My name is Jay. As y'all already know, I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me, it's been Man, probably about 20 years since I used drugs or alcohol to navigate this thing called life. I speak out about recovery because I believe that recovery is the expectation, and I believe that recovery is a right. I believe that no matter where you are in active addiction or pathway to sustainable recovery, that you should have the right to get the resources and the help that you need that's specifically tailored to your situation. How do I know that's important? Because I did 18 years in federal and state prison, so I know what it means to come home and be told to pull yourself out by your bootstraps when I ain't had no boots or no straps. So I definitely understand that. So again, the recovery is the expectations for me. And thank you all for being here. Before we really get into the meat, for lack of a better terms, of this presentation, I want to make sure that it's a safe place. Obviously, me saying it's a safe place, don't just make it a safe place. So I'm going to give some guidelines about how I think that we should interact. All right. So, because I know for me, I don't always have the presence of mind to say the right thing. Like I might say something like, come on, guys, let's go to the next slide. And somebody going to say, well, Jay, I'm not a guy. And I don't mean guys. I'm just a little Southern. Y'all may think I'm country, and sometimes we use terms or words that kind of describe a group of people, but not necessarily the subgroup or everybody in general. So sometimes I will say things like guys, and I don't mean it, y'all. So hold me accountable to that. I have no problem with that. Because again, I don't always say the right thing. So sometimes y'all know how it goes. So first rule, y'all, these three agreements, it's just three. Confidentiality. Y'all know what it is. What's said here, stay here. In other words, the lessons can travel, but the stories don't travel. The lessons can travel, but nobody business don't travel, right? So don't be talking about between me and you. I heard Jay spilling his guts on the webinar, and I'm got to tell you, don't do that, don't do that. Let Jay spill his own guts. All right. Number two, let's remain curious, right? Lean in, even when it's hard. So take what you need, leave what you don't. Your nervous system is the boss in this room, and then care for yourself. And also, when you're using the chat, please chat like you're in a barbecue, not a court hearing. Be real, be kind, but ain't nobody gonna do no roasting on here. If anybody doing their roasting, it's gonna be me. All right, all right. So we good. We good with those three agreements. We always know the oops and outs and open-mindedness, but I don't never have no problem in the state of Illinois about folks being open-minded. Y'all real good at that. So we good with these. We good with these. Thumbs up. Y'all just blink. It's okay. Y'all just blink. All right. I see a bunch of people blinking. Cool. Cool. All right. Let's get into it. So imagine, if you will, being pulled over. Have you ever been pulled over by the police and you knew you didn't do nothing wrong, but you felt like you was about to pass out? That's me. The police got behind me yesterday, and I don't do nothing illegal. And all of a sudden, I was super nervous, super anxious for no reason. I remember one day vividly, I was on my way to work. I hadn't been released from prison long, and I got pulled over for speeding. Yep, I was speeding. I wasn't going too fast, but I was going fast enough for them to pull me over. And when the cop finally got to the car, walked up to me, the first thing I did was jump. I was about to jump out the car and run. So I took my seatbelt out and I was about to run. Why was I about to run? Because historically, every single time I've ever been pulled over by the police, I run. Why you run, Jay? Because I probably didn't want to get caught. I was being a criminal, so I was trying to get away. Did I get away every time? No, I always got caught. But anyway, my habit and my brain and my body automatically popped my seatbelt off and I was about to run, but I didn't. And I remember my mind racing. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is he going to do? I hope the police don't kill me. Maybe I got a warrant. Maybe they released me from prison by accident. You talking about catastrophizing. I just went through it all. The officer walks up. My heart is doing about 190. And I roll down the window and out comes my mouth is, I'm sorry, officer. Totally contrary to what I was thinking I'd be. I didn't even know what I was apologizing for. Not at all. The officer said, why you got your seatbelt off? I told him because I was about to run. He was like, why? And I gave him my story. He gave me a seatbelt violation and didn't give me a ticket for speeding and told me to go about my way. That story turned out pretty good. However, the trauma that was activated as a consequence to that seemingly innocent speeding stop did something inside of me, activated something inside of me that I had never really felt and experienced before. My mind was racing, my body was still. But what does the body do before my mouth ever opens? What does my history have to say about this moment? And that time again, I didn't even know what I was apologizing for. That gap, y'all, the gap between what's happening in my body and what comes out of my mouth, that's where the trauma lives. And that's the gap that we're going to try to work on as we spend our time together. And I check the chat periodically, y'all. So if y'all talk, I'm gonna talk back. So we can do this. We can do this. We're gonna have a conversation. Like we're gonna presentation conversation. So I know it's limited of what you can put in there, and I don't want y'all to try to type out whole paragraphs, but we're gonna try to engage each other as much as we can. So if you didn't get the police story being pulled over, maybe that didn't track with you. Maybe that story didn't bowl down your alley. Have you ever sat in a staff meeting thinking one thing but saying another? If you like most people, both in your professional and personal life, you more often than not find yourself in situations thinking one thing and saying another. I know this webinar ain't really set up for y'all to engage a lot, but I understand that somebody know what I'm talking about. So if you understand what it means to be sitting in the room thinking one thing and saying another, just blink. I don't want to get y'all in trouble. Just blink, because I know y'all can do it. So without telling the story, give me a one in the chat if you've had a moment like that. Just give me a one in the chat where you said in the meeting, or you had a situation where you was thinking one thing and said another. Okay, I got some people in here. I got some people. Some of y'all names I'm familiar with. Y'all my folks. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. So, and I'm gonna get to know the rest of y'all before the day is, but it's this training is out. So good. That's good. So I'm talking to the right. I'm talking to the right audience. Okay, let me see if I can drive the point home a little bit closer. So for me, why is there such a disconnect between our thoughts and our words? I use those examples not to trivialize the topic. However, I'm sure each and every one you can relate to a similar experience. Just to be upfront, yeah, just to be upfront. I can be petty and I got a fly mouth, as they say. Fly in Black people vernacular mean smart, adequately, and stuff like that. So I got that. So it's been a lot of times when my mouth has gotten me into trouble. A person hit me in this eye so hard, my nose started bleeding, running my mouth, being a smart aleck. So I had to understand that. But also, there's been times in my life where my mouth got me in out of trouble. I was able to save my life. So mouth got me into trouble. Sometimes words and language got me out of trouble. But nevertheless, again, I find myself dancing around this council culture, understanding high sensitive topics, the urgency to be sensitive, and not knowing what to say in fear of breaking connection and damaging personal and professional relationships. So how do we keep it real and not hurt you in the process? And remember, this is a universal concept that we're trying to synthesize to some practicality. So, however, when you think about not only how do you keep it real without damaging the connection, think about specifically the audience and the demographic that we're dealing with. Think about how exacerbated it can be when you have experienced trauma, not only from the person that has experienced the trauma, but also if the helper have experienced the trauma and haven't quite resolved that too. Because some folks, none of y'all in this state, are dealing with young adults or dealing with people that have experienced trauma, and you may have even really addressed or unpacked or identified your own trauma because you may be gauging it by saying, well, I ain't have it that bad. Oh yeah, my bad, my bad. I was talking to somebody else. I ain't talking about y'all. Y'all, this is another audience. My bad. This is other folks. This is other training. So how do we keep it real? So in my experience, keeping it real come with a price. Hence my bloody nose, my black eyes. But being authentic does have a tendency to kind of blur the lines if you lose sight of the person you find yourself being. Authentic, going from authentic to being apologetic, right? Right. So you find these two oscillating. So you go from authenticity, people in recovery, because we know people in recovery, especially in young folks. These young folks, they have, if they ain't got nothing else still left from the computer, they still held on to the BS detector. They understand when you are not being real. They understand it. They understand it. So again, keeping it real come with a price. So how do you find yourself not always apologizing and being apologetic? So there's this tension that every helper sort of lives in. You lean in too far, being authentic, and you say something that land wrong. Somebody feelings hurt. Or you may even cross a boundary. or your foot might end up in your mouth. Or worse, you might end up with a bloody nose like me. You lean in too far into being apologetic, and you can become so careful that you stop being useful. Kids, they can smell apologetic from a mile away. They have grown up and they used to folks kind of walking around on eggshells around them their whole lives. And they don't need another one of those. They need a real person. So the question of this whole training is, how do we stay real without being reckless? We're going to stick a pin in that, y'all, and we're going to get back to it by the end. So again, the overall concept of this presentation, and because it's a training, we got to have some objectives, y'all, or y'all ain't gonna get no CU. So it has to be some objectives, some stuff y'all can walk away and take with. So I'm gonna approach these objectives like a 4-course meal, right? A 4-course meal. And here are the courses. At a high level, we're gonna define it, we're gonna see it, we're gonna hold it, and we're gonna practice it. And it unpacks like this. So the first one under define, we're going to just get a baseline understanding of trauma. We're going to kind of sprint through this because most of us know what trauma is. So some of the stuff I sprint through, I walk through, I jog through, but we're going to get through it. So we're going to gain insights into trauma, its effects on individuals, and the significance of trauma-informed practices. And then the thing you're going to see, you're going to learn non-clinical strategies for community-based settings that support trauma-informed approaches. Course 3 is you're going to hold it, acquire techniques to create supportive spaces that foster trust for children experiencing trauma. And then the last course, we're going to equip participants with the tools to effectively apply trauma-informed practices in the work that you do. Define it, see it, hold it, and practice it. And sometimes y'all, I talk a little fast or y'all listen a little slow. So if I go too fast, just be like, bring it down a little bit, man. Because especially when I get on my soapbox, they don't tell them what I might go. My cadence might speed up super fast. So I'm trying to be cognizant of it. So let's get into course 1, appetizer. It's really about awareness. So we're going to define it. So let's define it. So now before I tell you what my definition or the textbook definition of trauma is, in 5 words or less, if you can, don't AI it, don't Google it. Tell me what trauma is. Just give me a brief 5, 6, 7-word definition of trauma. Throw it in the chat for me, please. Fracturing. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Reaction to lived experience. Okay, I like that. An experience that impacts someone adversely. Yes. Brain altering. Yeah. Something that makes you feel awful ways you didn't even know. Causing emotional loss, relieving the same thing. Reality altering, stressful events that cause harm, history of mental anguish. An event that someone experiences disrupt their lives, a significant event, living in it every day. Okay, I like that. I like that. I like that. Event or situation that causes mental and life unbalance. Okay, y'all got it. Y'all got it. Y'all got it. These are some great definitions. Painful experience that adversely affects someone. Lasting adverse reactions following a distressing event. Okay, okay, okay. I got the right audience. So we have an understanding of trauma. So let me give you the textbook definition of how this thing goes. Trauma, an emotional response. This is the Webster's dictionary, the definition. An emotional response to a deeply distressing event, one that overwhelms one's ability to cope, right? That's the textbook definition. That's the textbook definition. But I like to remix those things. Can you still remix nowadays? I don't know if you can get in trouble for that. I want to remix the thing just a little bit. So for me, when I synthesize it to a simple concept, and this is from Gabriel Mate. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Ooh, that thing right there, that'll preach, right? If I was a preacher, I could take that and go. Trauma is what happens to you. Trauma is not, excuse me, what happens to you. It is what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Yeah, I like that one. I had to take that one. I had to take that one. That was a good one. So when we think about trauma, we kind of understand now based on your definitions, textbook definition, and how I remix that thing. Now let's get into the types of trauma. And these are like the big 3. And we can unpack each one of them because there's other types of trauma embedded in each one of these, but we're going to talk about these big three real quick. Acute trauma, the type of trauma that refers to a single traumatic event, car accident, natural disaster, assault. It can cause immediate distress. It may result in symptoms like shock, confusion, fear. Then you have chronic trauma, excuse me, chronic trauma. Chronic trauma refers to prolonged and repeated exposure to trauma, traumatic events and environments, such as emotional or physical abuse, domestic violence, living in a war zone. And then you got this complex trauma. Complex trauma occurs during childhood and involves multiple prolonged traumatic experiences, things like neglect, physical and sexual abuse, witnessing domestic violence. And it can have a profound impact on a child's development, relationship, and overall functioning. But then we got vicarious trauma, we have secondary trauma, and there's different types of trauma, but we're going to just want to highlight the big three for time purposes. And plus, I think you all have a good understanding with that. I don't want to paralyze the time by continuously talk about things that you all are familiar with, but I still wanted to make sure that we have a baseline understanding and we just kind of do a surface level of the types of trauma. So when we think about trauma, I can get a little nerdy. I can get a little nerdy because trauma shows up in so many different ways. And oftentimes, if we're not careful, we will meet it with labeling instead of understanding. Yeah, we will understand. We don't really, if we don't understand about what happens to the prefrontal cortex during trauma that affects planning and impulse control and problem solving, if we don't understand that the capacity to be able to have feelings and experiences and managing and sharing emotions and staying present as a result of different types of trauma, if we don't understand what it looks like when you're in the room, strong reactions can seemingly mirror irritants, scanning for danger when you come into the room. I can't get over daily setbacks. I minimize things that can activate the trauma, such as sensory stimuli that's too overloaded, a lack of power and control, relationship conflicts. There are so many different things that we have to be careful, and we have to be mindful that labeling and giving diagnostic labels can sometimes be hurtful. Labels can undermine healing. Labels may not accurately define current experiences, and they may not translate across culture and languages. Or labels are often applied during the greatest distress, used to screen in and out folks assigned without really understanding the impact of the trauma-informed lens. Right. So it's important that we do three things: that we get curious, that we read the coping, and then we plan the bill. All right. Because behavior is communication, curiosity is the entry point to healing. So, did we miss anything? What's true about trauma that we have not named yet? What's true about it? What's true about it? What's true about it? Let me check the chat. Let me check. A subjective response reaction to a threat. Yes. It never really goes away. Frozen thoughts that make it hard to move forward. An uncomfortable feeling that is a result of past events. Generational trauma. Yes. Yes. Generational trauma. That's so important. I hear that a lot, especially within the African American community. It's like, we want to break these generational curses. We want to break this generational trauma. I definitely hear that a lot. Not only in my community, but communities that I engage with and also have relationship with. So yes, shout out to that one as well. Great comments, y'all. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. You see somebody just drop one. Trauma is not equal for everyone. Yes, thank you for that, Sarah. And the effects of the wider community. That's true. Thank you for that. All right. So now that we kind of understand what trauma is, we understand, I just kind of talked about how it can show up with labeling, prefrontal cortex. We talked about the different types of trauma. So now people who have experienced trauma, this is what the data suggests. 4 times more likely to become a person with alcohol use disorder, 3 times more likely to use illicit drugs, 12 times more likely of a risk of completing suicide, 3 times more likely to experience an STD, 4 times more likely to experience depression, 2.5 times more likely to develop even liver disease. And there's way more numbers that support the effects, the impact that people have on trauma. Because if we understand that over 90% of individuals that come into the behavioral health sector, that's adolescents and kids alike, have been exposed to trauma, then it's important that we have to always be talking about trauma. That's why it is so important. All right, James, did you have a question? Somebody said they had a question. Somebody had a question. All right. And if not, we should have some time at the end and we can always come back and address any questions. All right. So why is it important that we be trauma informed? Why? Why is it important, y'all? And that's not a rhetorical question. Why is it important that we be trauma informed? If we just said over 90% of individuals that come into the behavioral health system have experienced some type of trauma, so why is it important that we are trauma informed? To be sensitive to potential needs. Yes, Kristen, I like that. Anybody else? There you go. The best care for each other. Yes, healthcare perspective, so we can understand behavior. Okay, I like that, Sarah. Anybody else? Why? Why it is so important that we're trauma informed? Empathy. I like that, Carissa. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Outside of the fact that 90% of individuals that come to us have experienced trauma, then we also have to understand that 70% of US adults have experienced at least one traumatic event. 64% of US adults reported to have at least one ACE score. 17% of US adults report four or more ACE scores. 40% of high schoolers reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, and that's in 2023. 20% of US high schoolers seriously consider suicide in 2023. 42% of teen girls reported persistent sadness and hopelessness, a decade high. That's a decade high. 40 to 85% of helping professionals show signs of vicarious or secondary traumatic stress. I'm gonna read that one again for somebody that might have missed it. 40 to 85%, and this is from SAMHSA, helping professionals, that's you all, show signs of vicarious or secondary traumatic stress. So if you're sitting here thinking, damn, that's a lot. Yes, it is. But here's a better way to read it. This means that almost everyone you serve and almost everyone you work alongside is carrying something, including you. So trauma isn't unusual. It's the water that we're all swimming in. Secondly, if we know that there are so many ways that people can experience trauma, and there are so many different ways that trauma can impact you, and some of us have our own trauma work that's often unaddressed. Therefore, understanding trauma is critical if you want to make better connections because it allows you to see the whole person. Now, the question I often ask is, have something ever happened to you and you didn't realize it until much later? I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you a story real quickly. So, when I was in prison, I was determined to work myself to death, and I tried to work out so much that I said maybe I'm gonna be in the best shape of my life, or it's gonna take me out the game. Take me out the game. For y'all don't know what that means. That means kill. I just say this is how bad I want to either I'm just gonna work myself to death. So I would go out in the hottest sun ever, run 5, 6 miles, do sprints. I would do everything. So one day, going out there to mind my business and run, and what unbeknownst to me, it was about a ride about to pop off. I didn't know it was about to pop off. I didn't get the ride memo. Had I got the memo, I would have stayed in my cell. I didn't get the memo. I was not part of the group chat. I go out there, all hell break loose. I end up getting stabbed on the side of my hip right here. Still got the scar to prove it. War wound. After they shot the gun, got everybody down, they start rounding us up, sending us back to the unit. The unit meaning inside the jail, as everyone lined up to go back in, the officers will stop, check you for any visible signs of hurt or danger or of any kind of injuries, and then they would send you wherever you need to go. I was only bleeding lightly, told them it was a cut, they let me go. But when I think about that experience, not one of us was asked anything about how we felt, anything about, there was never a follow-up conversation, never a follow-up session, anything after that traumatic event where people was actually asked, how did you experience that? Do you need any kind of mental health services? Do you need any type of trauma service or anything as a consequence to that visibly traumatic experiences? I didn't know years later that in that moment, something happened to me that I often relive to this day. I celebrated being released from prison 10 years ago in November. And in that celebration, I invited maybe 30, 40 guys that I knew that had been out and doing well post incarceration. I posed the question to the group, how many of you all actually have experienced large amount of pain during your life? Maybe two people raised their hand. that they have experienced some type of hardship or some type of painful experience. 2 people out of 40. And I had everybody in there, the guys that had the life sentence that got it reduced, guys that did 34 years, 10 years, been in prison most of their whole life. And nobody identified that prison experience except for 2 people as something that they experienced as painful. Some even talked about being raised as a young adult, growing up, or as they say, jumping off the porch or getting into trouble early or getting into the streets early in life. They still never understood that to be a painful experience because every room has a history. And if you serve people who have lived through something. And oftentimes they don't even really know the impact of what they lived through, especially when we're talking about children, right? So it is so important that we understand how to identify trauma and create safe spaces where people can feel they can unpack and be themselves, right? So as a refresher, as we come to defining trauma-informed care, so I just want to make sure we get this in. So trauma-informed care or trauma-informed violence care is a framework for relating to and helping people who have experienced negative consequences after exposure to dangerous experiences. So when I think about trauma and how we approach the work, after we peel back all the stats, all the data, out of all the definitions, at the end of the day, the work that we do is largely done through talking, through communication. So if we know when we're dealing with folks that's been traumatized, how do we connect with those folks? How do we connect with those young folks? And a trauma-informed system helps you do that systemically because it's a practice, it's not necessarily a checklist. So an approach that recognizes trauma-informed care is an approach that recognizes the widespread impact of trauma and integrates that knowledge into every interaction, actively avoiding re-traumatization, right? Re-traumatizing, right? So it's important that we don't re-traumatize folks, right? Because in a real sense, oftentimes the folks that's coming to us, especially those young folks, they don't really have a strong sense of trust for the system. Trust is something that you should learn early in life. And if kids are experiencing either having high ACE scores or involved in substance use disorder or what they may call risky behavior, and their brains ain't fully developed, then they don't really understand. One of the things I have to tell my nieces all the time is when trying to raise kids, especially with some with the behavioral health challenges, that the part of it is that you don't even know what you don't know. As an adult, I know what I don't know. And I know I don't know a lot. But I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. But kids, they got all the sense. I told my niece the other day, you know everything except for how to match a shirt and a pair of pants. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. That's just me. That's me. But they kids. So how do we engage folks, and how do we make sure that we create environments where people feel safe, and how do we have a approach of trauma informed care, right? So I'm gonna give y'all this remix of trauma informed care. This is the remix. The remix, when we're talking about it, I see your history and I meet you with respect, safety, and that last one, y'all, collaboration. So trauma informed care begins the moment we stop pretending that it ain't even there. All right. So it's got the formal definition. Trauma-informed care is an approach that recognizes the impact of trauma, avoids to re-traumatizing folks. And you got the remix. I see you. I see your history. All right. So we covered a lot. So now we're going to take a pause. We're going to take a pause. And this is an exercise that you can do with your clients too, with your participants and with the youth. So right now, you're just going to pause slowly and just do this brief interactive guiding exercise, right? So the first thing, name to yourself 5 things that you can see. Name to yourself 5 things that you can see. And if you visually impaired, 5 things that you can visualize. 5 things, 5 things, 5 things you can see. 5 things you can see. And then name 4 things that you can feel. 4 things you can feel. 5 things you can see. 4 things you can feel. 3 things that you can hear other than my voice. 2 things you can smell, or 2 smells you like. And 1 thing that you can taste, or either 1 thing that you're grateful for. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 that you can see, 4 that you can feel, 3 that you can hear, 2 that you can smell or smell you, and 1 that you can taste. If your nervous system is anything like mine, that just brought you back into the room if you wasn't. And this is a tool that you can teach kids in less than 90 seconds. Y'all can have that. That's free. Y'all can have that. Chestnut pay for that. Y'all can have that. So up to this point, we've been doing the work of knowing, right? We've been talking about what you know, talking about defining what trauma is, knowing what it does to the brain, knowing what it looks like when you walk into the room, the shutdown, the reactivity, the kid who can't sit still, the auntie who won't stop apologizing, the parent that keeps getting in the way because they feel like their kid have to tell them everything that's going on. None of these parents. We've named it. We talked about the labels, and we talked about the labels that can hurt us just as much as they can help us. That was course one. Now we're going to step into course two. And I'm going to be honest, y'all, this is a little bit harder one because knowing is private. You can know with your headphones on at lunch. But the second you got to do something, well, you got to do something with what you know in the lobby, in the front desk, at the dinner table, on the phone, in the church basement, dealing with kids with undeveloped brains. That's a whole different game. So course two is I see it. I see it. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And here's the thing. Most of us do our work, well, a lot of us do our work inside and outside of clinic or therapeutic environments, I would say. We don't often have the luxury of having those 50-minute hours. We don't always have the couch, the fishbowl of candy on the table. Sometimes we got 8 minutes in the hallway. You got a phone call that just started off wrong. We got somebody in front of us asking us question while somebody on the phone asks another question, and nobody don't trust us because we look like the system. And all of this happening, and the clock is ticking. So course two is about practical engagement. And yeah, I said engagement on purpose. I didn't say intervention because for me, intervention is more clinical. Intervention sounds like something somebody does when you got a problem. Like we're gonna have an intervention on you. And those have their place. I'm not shading, I'm not down interventions. But engagement is when two human beings show up for each other. I'm not an interventionist. We are neighbors with skills, two human beings showing up for each other, same skill set, just different posture. So here's our objective for this course. It's plain and simple. When you see it, we're going to learn non-clinical, practical engagements, non-clinical strategies for community-based settings that support these trauma-informed practices. So let's play a game. 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 Let's see how well y'all do. So I'm gonna drop a sentence. I'm gonna say a sentence, and I want you to drop the reframe or the response. All right, just something quick. I'm gonna go 3 quick rounds. Number one, first round. I'm gonna drop the sentence. Y'all respond. Drop the reframe. Or why are you crying? Yeah, you're engaging with somebody, and why are you crying? Why are you crying? They used to tell me that when I was a kid. Why are you crying? I'm gonna give you something to cry about. I'm already crying. You gonna give me something to cry about? So why are you crying? What's the response to that? Why are you crying? What's the reframe? I like that. Okay, are you okay? Oh, I got a group. I got a smart group. I got a smart group. Y'all graduated soon, cum laude. I graduated. Thank you, Lord. So I got a smart group. Okay, I like that. I like that. Hey, what's going on? Seem to be upset. Okay, some of y'all putting y'all AI, y'all MI motivation interviewing skills to use. I see it. You're upset. Would you like to chat? All right. Okay. I'm gonna go round two. Round two. That happened so long ago. You should be over this by now. Come on, little Timmy. You've been talking about this forever. You should be over this right now. What's the reframe? You should be over this by now. God, working my nerves. Rebuffed. So, what is still bothering you? I can see the situation that's bothering you. You're struggling with this. What can we do to move past this? It sounds like that's really affecting you. Tell me how that affected you. Tyrone put it in all caps. All right, then. How can I help you? Okay, then, Teresa. Rhonda, I can see you still need help with that. Okay, I like that. Okay, okay. I like that. I got that. We got some good folks on here. Round three, round three. Man, it could be so much worse. And when I was in prison, people used to say stuff like, all you got is 5 years. I can sit on the toilet for 5 years. That's stupid as hell. But anyway, third one, at least it wasn't worse. At least it wasn't worse. What was it like for you? Okay, Becky, Martin, I hear this is difficult for you. Maybe we can work together. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. At least it wasn't worse. At least it wasn't worse. Reframe. Tell me more about it and what we can do to figure out a solution together. Sarah, thank you for that. All right. So look what just happened here. Good job, y'all. Thank you so much for that. So look what just happened here. I gave the same situation 3 different times. Same tears, same hurting person standing in front of us, but the words we picked up, they changed the whole temperature in the room. Changed the whole temperature in the room. One reframe sounded like, I seek you. Another one sounded like, hurry up and feel better so I can feel comfortable. Ooh. That's how we got to be careful about that one, y'all, especially dealing with children. Sometimes we got to be like, sometimes we got to be mindful of that attitude of hurry up and feel better so I can feel comfortable. Because sometimes that's what we're avoiding. We're avoiding having to feel uncomfortable. Now, both might come from a good heart, but only one really keeps the door open. And that right there is the work. I like these two. Harley put, that shouldn't undermine your own struggles. Let's work together to making your situation better. I like that. Impact versus intent. I like that. I like that. I like that. Because Becky, to your point, I can have good intent and still have negative impact. If I go out there to my car right now and somebody accidentally hit my car, they had no intention in doing it, but I still got a $500 deductible. I still got some negative impact. So sometimes there's a dichotomy, or there's a divide between intention and impact. Yes, I like that, sir. It sounds really frustrating. I hear you. Let's unpack that. I like that. I like that. Good exercise, y'all. Thank you for that. Now, before I give y'all any strategies or any techniques, any engagement, we got the words, but we want to make sure that we do this thing right. So let me give y'all this information too. This is important. So this is what it looks like when you slam the door versus you open the door. Slam the door. What's wrong with you? Open the door. What happened to you? Slam the door. Why you didn't? Open the door. What got in the way? Slam the door. Calm down. Open the door. I'm here. Take your time. You are being so a drama person. You're being dramatic. Chill. Open the door. This is a lot. I see you. Slam the door. Just talk to me. Open the door. I'm here when you're ready. Oh, don't worry about it. Slams the door. What would help right now? Opens the door. Because in a real sense, some of us, we are in this state of ambivalence where we understand the work, but we really don't understand the approach all the time. And sometimes our youth are ambivalent. Like, I want to share, but I don't know how that experience is going to turn out. So we're caught in this state of ambivalence. Right? So it's important that we find the middle road. And sometimes it's simply just changing your posture. So what if the words you spoke appeared on your skin? Would you still be beautiful? Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. We live in a culture where words are examined, they're overused, and oftentimes we just abuse words. We live in a culture where folks are passionate about words, about language, about the way that we use them. Kevin Hart just had a roast. I don't know if y'all seen him, but boy, they is mad about that because some of the jokes in there was woo. Well, right. But we live in a world where we're in a culture where language and words are interesting at this time. We work in community-based settings, what makes this harder, not easier, because in community, little John Mama, you seen little Ray and them, you seen Patricia, you seen little Sarah and them, and they folks, and they go to school with your church and all this stuff, and you trying to figure out, oh man, how do we do all of this? So what happens when these words don't land what they're supposed to land, because we have these interpersonal relationships? They land, they stay, but these words become the soundtrack that we replay. So again, how do we do it? Ask yourself this. Have you ever found yourself, let's go back to this, vacillating like the fan? The fan oscillates, vacillates on one side to another, between two choices, excuse me, when doing this work. Remember at the start of the training when I gave like this high level description of this presentation, I told y'all the work that we going is going to get personal, and and how sometimes it can activate things for you. So here's where it gets personal for me. I often get caught up into two choices, right? This authenticity, excuse me, showing up, being real, staying true, naming what's actually in the room, telling the truth, speaking truth to power, naming and claiming it, even when it costs me comfort. But on the other side, the apologetic side is softening. Sometimes when you're hedging, making it palatable so nobody flinches, apologizing, sometimes with my words, sometimes with my body language, sometimes with a smile, don't really match with how I'm feeling or the sentence I just said. And that's for taking up the space where the truth needs to be. And I'll be honest with y'all, most days the apologetic voice is louder for me. It's safer. It keeps the room comfortable, but comfort and healing don't always live at the same address. So the question I'm sitting with, and the question I'm asking you to sit with is this: which voice am I leading with today? And who is paying for it? So, do you find it hard to be your authentic self? And what does authentic mean to you? That's not a rhetorical question. Just think about it, think about it, think about it. What do you find it hard to be your authentic self in the work that you do, especially in engaging with the youth? And what does authenticity or what does authentic mean to you? Rhonda said, keeping it real. Lindsay said, genuine. Yes, being honest. I don't find it hard, Christian said, but it's definitely a balance. That's right. Transparent, personable, being vulnerable. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that. I like those responses. Being true to what I believe. Thank you for that, Amber. Thank you for that, Jessica. Christian, a balance of being your true personality versus being professional. Authentic mean authentic. I'll be butchering these words. Means that you can be what you think you want, just being what you truly are. I like that. Angela Martin, rooted in your values. Angela being your true self. I like that. I like that. I like that. All right. So when you see yourself as others see you, before when anyone else can, before anyone else should. So think about situations that you find yourself in that were highly sensitive, and you had to balance those two things. So I'm going to put in the chat of a balance between authenticity and being apologetic. I recall a situation where I felt wrong and I felt like I was right. The client felt right. I felt right. Everybody usually feel like they're right in the moment. And I wanted to be authentic in my conversation with them regarding my experience, but my expression, I found myself again being apologetic or being a jackass. Yeah. Sometimes in this work, y'all, if we're not careful, none of y'all, I know I have doing this work came across as a jackass. And another example too is worth exploring is when we're talking about culture. We're talking about dealing with connections and culture. For an example, certain people can say certain things within their own culture that you can't say. I ain't gonna touch that one. I ain't gonna touch that one. I ain't gonna touch that one. Christian said it's okay to disagree, apologize, and keep it pushing. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. So culture. So we have to be careful about language for culture because sometimes you can say something and it can seemingly be harmless because you use these terms or phrases within your culture, but somebody else can definitely take offense to it. So just think about a situation where you put your foot in your mouth because the goal is to connect, the goal is to be authentic, but also to be aware and sensitive, right? A couple years back, I was working with a family, different culture than mine. I made a joke at the table, didn't go quite well. We can tell the whole energy of the room just went out. So if you had one of those experiences where you kind of drop the ball when it comes to language and cultural nuances, then just be mindful of that. Right? Because I sometimes I say stuff, I might misidentify or misgender a person. Because I sometimes I call everybody bro. Hey, bro. He's like, no, I ain't no bro. So I think it's important, especially with culture and subcultures, to understand that culture is much more than language, but language is one way that we definitely can make connections through culture. So now let's get into some strategies, right? Again, be careful not to put your foot in your mouth. We've done it all. And trauma-informed care means catching it sooner or later. We've all done some of these things. You just have to catch it sooner than later. So here are some strategies that can help kind of bring all this stuff together, right? Got about 30 minutes left, so we want to make sure we get through them. So let's look at these strategies. But first, this is the standard strategy. Then I'm gonna translate them into real talk. All right. So the first one: train staff and volunteers. Provide comprehensive training for volunteers. Create safe spaces with screening and assessments, culture responsive practices, trauma informed programming, trauma sensitive language. Again, screening and assessment, build collaborative partnerships, empowerment, and choice. Choice is very important for those individuals that experience trauma. Supportive network and ongoing evaluation and improvement. And make sure that last one, y'all, that number 10, that we actually look at the feedback forms, be honest about the feedback, understand that there's this industry is always evolving. Some of y'all old enough to remember when you could walk up to the airport and see your folks off. Some of y'all remember when you didn't have to wear seatbelts. So things in every industry has evolved. So it is always important that in our behavioral health, our human service industry, that we're always looking at ways to evolve. Let's see. No problem. Reading a book called The Urgency of Awareness. Yeah, sometimes it's better to stay silent, listen to observe. I like that. I like it. All right, just wanted to make sure I keep up with the track. All right, so those are the 10. I'm gonna take those 10 and I'm gonna turn it into 4. All right. So here's 4 moves that we can do that kind of simplifies it. Slow down. Speed reads as judgment. That's judgment. Sometimes when we're going too fast, it could be interpreted as judgment. Name it. Sometimes we have to name it. Acknowledge what you notice. Soften it. Use language that returns dignity, and stay. Don't flee the discomfort that you may have caused. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that I think is important is that we walk into a room that we have to understand that we have to be mindful that we don't wince. Your face is the first answer they get. Make it a soft one and don't flinch. Information is information, not an accusation. I remember I had the pleasure of being a TEDx coach for a transgender person. And I had never really, I have colleagues that are transgender persons, but I never had a personal relationship with Mo. Mo is a transgender person, did a great job at his TEDx. And it was just interesting navigating through that conversation and that relationship because I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to make a joke. I didn't know if I said something inadvertently. So all I did was just practice this thing called PINK. PINK, y'all. PINK is an acronym. Practice intentionally not knowing. Because some of us are into a room, even with these kids, because we feel like, oh, we already know, we done seen it all, done it all. And we stop being curious. We stop walking into these rooms just with an open mind. And so I encourage you all to practice PINK. Practice intentionally not knowing. And so I'm gonna give you all a framework that kind of helps me navigate hard discussions, whether it's dealing with a kid, a coworker, hell, my own kids. I always like to run it through the dish model. Or just running through the dish model, right? Because sometimes it's important to be a student of people and tell the room the truth, right? So, because authenticity is the cheapest and most expensive thing in the room. Pay it forward. All right. So let's get into this dish model. So there are 4 pieces to this dish model. So the first one is disclaimer. Right. So it's important that I offer disclaimer. Listen, man, when I was dealing with Mo, trying to get a relationship with him and understand him, Mo, I have never had this experience before. I've never had a relationship. I don't know what I don't know. Help me navigate through this. I'm gonna make some mistakes. I might be clumsy, but I don't know what I don't know. Name what you don't know. Number 2 is, or part 2 rather, is introspection. Look in before you look out. In other words, let me make sure that I got my stuff together. What am I saying? What am I feeling? What am I leading with? What is my intentions? And let me look inside first, right? We have to look inside. We have to have what I like to refer to as a mirror perspective. Like we do real good on the window perspective. We can see everything out the window, but sometimes that mirror perspective can get challenging. So introspection. The next one is share. Say something true, not nothing polished. Language got to be true. It don't have to be polished. And then hold space, stay present without fixing. And somebody's put in the chat, sometimes you just can be quiet. All right, so that's the framework that we're gonna work through. And remember, implementing these strategies, using these strategies is what helps, and just make them as a practice. So again, it's just a practice. It's not a method. It's not a diagnosis. It's a practice. So let's get into course 3, right? So we understand what it means to define it, and we have some practical examples that I just given you. And again, you all get these slides, so don't try to internalize all this information at once. I know it's a lot. It's a lot. So let's get into course 3. So, and this is about holding it. These are for skills for safe environment. This will allow techniques to create supportive spaces that foster trust for children and adults experiencing trauma. So let's get into this next course. Let that insert. So before you serve anything, you set the table. Same as in this work that we do. Before you ask a kid the hard questions, you set the room. So there are 6 elements to this, to this trauma-informed table. You got predictability. They know what's coming sometimes. Choice, even the small ones. Where to sit, how to start, right? Give them choice. Voice. You ask, you don't assume. Trust. You do what you said you're going to do, or you let them know if you can't. Repair. When you break it, you name it, you fix it. Empowerment. You leave room for what's capable, not less. So now that I've given you the dish, so we're going to take the dish one step further, right? Let's take the dish concept one step farther. We're going to start with this disclaimer. All right, this disclaimer. Authentic versus apologetic is the core, again, to this approach. It allows you to be transparent with our peers so you can see the person. It allows us to be transparent with the kids that we serve so you can see them as people. We can't vibe without being real and sometimes being sorry. So that whole disclaimer. What follows is a diagnosis or a clinical method. It is a practice, practical people in real rooms repairing in real time. Disclaimer. So again, when you're working with somebody, offer that disclaimer. Again, let's look inside. Let's look inside. Look in before you look out. What's true for me right now before I lead anyone anywhere else, right? Be in touch with yourself. Share something true, not something polished. Again, vulnerability is the price of credibility in trauma-informed care. Hold space. Hold space, don't fill it. To be present without trying to fix, feel, or finish. Think of a time where you may have came in too fast with something before trust was established. Even in some of these trainings, I like to do connection before content. It's like sometimes before we connect, we want to start giving information. And I think it should be the other way around. Holding space is going through something, but when you're going through something, you're not going along. So space could be measured in time. It can be measured in a lot of different ways, but it's important that we hold space, right? Not only physically, but also not only literally, but also figuratively. Right? So I'm gonna ask this question just to break it up a little bit. And if y'all get this wrong, I'm ending the call. I'm ending this training. They'll get mad at me, but I'm shutting it down. I got one simple question for y'all. One question, one question, one question. Who decides if it's trauma? Who makes that determination? Fine. Okay. I got one answer. I'm not gonna look at it yet. I have to look at it because y'all got this wrong. I swear I'm gonna just log off and I'm going back to bed. Okay. Whew, y'all got it. Okay, hold on. The person living it, the person. Yes, yes, yes. The person determines if it's trauma. Full stop. The person. The person. And I know sometimes we get into the habit of this big trauma, little trauma. It's all trauma, y'all. Because when we get to minimizing, when we get to numbing experiences to other people's trauma, oh man, so yeah, you was just unsheltered for a week. I was raised by wolves and we ain't even had no shelter. You ain't really been through nothing. We can be careful. We have to be careful with that. It's the person. If they say it's trauma, it's trauma. And I know it gets tricky because sometimes, just to be this real talk, real time, right? So this is some real stuff. Because sometimes if we're not careful with dealing with youth, and if they feel like they can use the trauma card or the mental health card to get out of trouble or to use as an excuse then sometimes it's hard to identify when the kids is just being kids and mischievous and just doing what kids do versus it being something that's exaggerated or it's an adaptation from trauma. And sometimes it's hard to determine the two. Because I know I got homeboys like, no, they just need a belt. They don't need all that. They don't need all that therapy. They just need a belt. Then you got some people that's like, no, that ain't necessarily the truth either. They don't need punishment. They need support. So sometimes we have to be able to have the skills, the resources, and to be able to make the connections and to build the trust where we can distinguish when it's just a kid being a kid and doing what kids do versus a kid that's acting out as a response to a traumatic experience. And that is so hard. And I wish I could give y'all a simple, part and true way for doing it, but it ain't. It is not. You just got to, again, practice intentionally, not knowing. Holding that space, often a disclaimer, looking at yourself, sharing and being introspective, being honest about the situation. Those are the hardest things. And so there are 5 categories, right? These are the 5 categories of techniques for practical, repeatable use in real rooms. Body, they can see your body language, the tone of your voice, the words, the cadence that you use. When are you silent? When is the need to repair a relationship versus like, nah, this is what we need to do to make this thing work. And it's going to be uncomfortable versus, yeah, I damaged something. I need to repair it. Right. Because in a real sense, safety should be built into the room. It should be built into the room. Right. So here's the body. Soften your shoulders before you speak. The words. If it sounds like before, are you, right? Use words like it sounds like or you are. Just be careful with your words. All right. Voice, drop your pitch, slow your pace. Eyes, look longer than that feels comfortable. Here are some more techniques. Silence, wait 3 seconds longer than you want to. And one of the things I've learned because I am hypersensitive, y'all. They say it's because I'm a Pisces, and I have to, sometimes I just got to take a beat. I have to pause. And then mirror. Sometimes I have to reflect their words before adding my own words. Repair. If you mess it up, name it, then move on. Exit. Always leave them more whole than what you found. And then you build a room. Physical safety, the doors, lights, exit, sight lines. Remember, these are practices to make sure that people feel safe in trauma-informed environments when they come into the room. Physical safety, doors, lights, exit signs, sight lines. The room talks before you do. Building the room is emotional safety, tone, pace, eye contact, predictability calms the nervous system. Clear boundaries and expectations. Say what's coming, say what's not, and stick to it. Trauma-informed language, first person language. Replace why with what happened. Choice and autonomy. Offer the smallest possible choice and then a bigger one. Hold the room. Collaborating decision making. Before you act, even when it slows the meeting down. Cultivate trusting relationships. Trust is built in 100 small, consistent moments, not one grand one. Number 8, trauma-informed staff training. Practice the hard scripts before the hard conversations. Support networks and peer connections. No one heals in isolation, including the helper. Regular feedback and evaluations. Ask the people closest to the work what's working, right? Sometimes I believe that the person that's closest to the problem is often better equipped to solving a problem. I can't stand it when people up here make decisions for folks down here without being in relationship with those folks. All right. So it's important that we understand and that we tap into those individuals that is closest to doing the work and get feedback on how policies and procedures and approaches should be taken. All right. And now this brings us to our 4th course, right? This is where we practice it. We bring it all together. We empower participants to implement trauma-informed practices. You want to feel empowered and effectively apply these practices every day on the floor. Practice, practice, practice. And here are some of the things that we can do. The first one is safety. let's make sure that we are in the habit of making folks feel safe. Not just physical safe, but emotionally safe, mentally safe, spiritually safe. Creating a safe environment and a supportive environment that provokes physical and emotional safety for individuals that have experienced trauma. Trustworthiness. It is so hard to have a good relationship with somebody that you don't trust. And with that trustworthiness come in, so does transparency. Building trust by being reliable, consistent, and transparent in all your interactions and communication. And then you have this choice and empowerment, safety, choice, empowerment, empowering by choice, built one beat at a time. And three things that you should put in your bag, y'all. You should have all three of these things in your bag. Keep them in your bag. Number one, peer support. If you don't know what it is, find out and get you a certified peer specialist ASAP. Get two, matter of fact, and pay them good. Don't You don't process this work alone. You find your people. Trauma toolbox, a handful of phrases, a few techniques, and the courage to use them. Put this in your bag, put this in your bag or in your wallet. Take care of yourself. You're an instrument. Tune it, rest it, and don't break it. And before you go, just to make sure that we understand the full of this training, like bring it all together, a practice. Remember, we talked about disclaimer, introspection, share, hold space, a posture, be authentic, not necessarily apologetic, a promise, leave every person more whole than what you found there. And this is what the table looks like when everybody gets a seat. We have to remember, you all, we have to remember this. Again, we want to touch on vicarious trauma. This is called the helper's tax, right? We want to make sure that this is a quick reality check for you all. Over 40 to 85% of helping professionals carry vicarious trauma. This is not a professional failure, it's an occupational hazard, like the roofer with knee problems, the work costs, right? So we have to make sure that you all take care of yourself, because this is what the table looks like. Remember the question we pinned at the start. How do you stay real without being reckless? The answer, you do the work inside, you check yourself before you wreck yourself, and then you stop apologizing for carrying out loud. The kids that you serve, they don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. They have plenty of grown-ups who showed up for them for the paycheck, the hours and the programs. They're starving for adults, for grown-ups who show up because they actually see them. That's the meal. That's what we're here to serve. And thank you so much for sitting at this table with me. I hope that you got something out of this. And if you can, you all have three quick questions for y'all before I take any questions. The first one is drop in the chat what you liked about what you heard. What did you like? What did you like? Put it in the chat. What did you like? What did you like? What did you like? What did you like? Oh, thank you. Your realness. What did you like? What did you like? Inspired. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Pink, practice intentionally not knowing. Thank you for that, Becky. Perspective. Thank you, thank you. So what did you like? The next one, y'all, what did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn? You got to please tell me you learned something. Please tell me you learned something. So what did you like? What did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn? Yes, yes. What did you learn? And the last one, what can you use? What can you use? What did you like? What did you learn? What can you use? What can you use? How to have a better attitude to handling trauma. Trauma looks different with people. Bro, you hit every point. I'm waiting on the podcast. Good job. Thank you, Ernest. Appreciate it. More insight about dealing with individual trauma. Yes, y'all. And I know some of you are probably saying, well, Jay, you didn't talk a whole lot about kids. And I embedded specifically the kids model in here because I wanted people to understand. I didn't oversaturate the content with kids stuff because I believe that if we can just learn to make connections, if we can learn to be more authentic, then dealing with the youth, it's going to be nuanced. It's going to be challenging because of their brains being underdeveloped and just because of age. You know, that part of their brain don't really kick in until they say 24. I'm seeing my son 30, and I think his brain just developed yesterday. So it's so hard. But I think the work that you do in engaging the youth is important. But again, it starts with this baseline understanding of trauma-informed practices, and how to be engaged with people through the dish model and in other ways. Because if you can make connections with anybody, whether it's a child or adult, then you got them. All right. I love the quote. If the words you spoke appeared on your skin, would you still be beautiful? That's a great reminder of adults and kids. Yes. How you have a positive mindset in dealing with those that have lived experience in youth. Thank you. Okay, so that's a question. How to have a positive mindset in dealing with those that have lived experience in youth? I don't know if that's a question or not, David. Sent email to Jessica. All right. So that is about it in terms of the presentation. The kids you serve don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. That's the meal. That's what we're here to serve. Thank you for sitting at this table with me. If there's one thing that you'll do differently on Monday or tomorrow, write it down, tell a person, make it small enough to keep. All right. So that's my assignment for you all before I take these questions. What's one thing you'll do differently Monday? Well, we're going to say to Thursday, or you may want to wait till Monday. I want you to write it down, tell one person, and make it small enough to keep, and specifically about how you're going to engage someone differently. Because if you do the dish model and you do your disclaimer, your introspection, you know that some of the areas in your life, if you have some self-awareness where it's like, nah, when I'm dealing with these youth, or I'm dealing with clients or peers, then I know I need to be a little more sharp in this area. So write it down, tell one person to hold you accountable, and make it small enough to keep. All right. Thank you for your work. Thank you for you. It matters more than what you ever told. Y'all have any questions or concerns, y'all can ask me. But right now, we're gonna stop sharing. I have some. Let's make sure y'all know I did some reading, y'all. These are all my references, so I just didn't make this stuff up and get out of AI. I did my thing. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing now. Any questions? Let's see. If y'all see any questions, please let me know. Before you leave this training, please. Oh yeah, we're gonna have some housekeeping stuff we're gonna mention in a minute. I just want to open the floor for any questions, comments, or anything. You all were a great audience. Chat was amazing, y'all. Thank you so much for that. Love the interaction. Thank you all. I received the personal accolades as well. Thank you for that. All right, no questions, no concerns. I want to make sure y'all get y'all money worth because y'all ain't getting no refund. So y'all don't take this thing. Y'all okay? Thank you, Jay. But thank you so much, Becky. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, no questions, no questions. All right, all right. Well, y'all will definitely get the slides to this. Again, thank you so much. The work that you do is vitally important. Remember, it's all a process. We don't have a solution to nobody. We don't have a fix. We just have some techniques and some tools, and you try them, you use them, you adapt them. People are always evolving. Culture is dynamic. So just continue to lean into the work. We need you for this work. So take care of yourself and just be yourself because everybody else is taken. Turn it over to the team at Chestnut. Thank you so much. It's all a pleasure. Shout out to Chestnut, y'all. I'm gonna say this before I let them talk. Y'all can talk shit about these people because I know that everybody don't always get it right, but these folk care about y'all because they reach out, they listen to y'all, and don't know. I work with a lot of different behavioral health systems, but Chestnut, CCE, like the whole team, like all of y'all, I can name a bunch of y'all that work Grace, Cheney, all y'all folks, people that I know, people that I interact with, and I'm telling you all, from me to y'all, from the outside looking in, that deal with a lot of behavioral health entities. Chestnut, they be on out. Like they really have a true desire to do something different with the system to make sure that it's not always met with like animosity, resentment, and just the typical nastiness that sometimes when you meet folks like Chestnut, they the bomb, y'all. I'm telling you, y'all better get with them, listen to them, take their trainings, and embrace it. So thank y'all so much. Shout out to Chestnut. And that wasn't because they pay me either. I really mean it. Go ahead, y'all. Take it over.
Thank you, Jay. That was so sweet. We're going to stay on till 2:30 for any last minute questions or comments. But that is all we had today. So thank you guys so much. Please make sure that if you needed your hours that you do your ICBE link was put in by Jessica Johnson, and then I put in the end of the session survey. So please do that. That allows for us to make those edits and adjustments and who we should ask to come in next. We really do listen to you guys, so please give us that feedback so we can make those changes and see you guys next time.
In other words, y'all ain't got to go home, but y'all, I gotta get the hell up over here. I feel that information to see you. Let's
That's
see.
what the answer that one. Where do I go to sign out? I don't know.
So you will receive, so Mia, the CEU certificate, you can print that. When you do all of the things, it will send you to that, and then you can print it or save it as a PDF for your records. So I would do that. And then Jim, if you pop up, Jessica, if you would like to pop that link in the chat one more time so that people can get it. That way we can get all the CEUs one more time. But yes, thank you, Jay, so much for all the kudos at the end.
Oh yeah, I meant that.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, y'all are good people to work with. Trust me. Trust me. Trust me. I was like, Lord.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica. And then afterwards, you'll be getting a link straight from me, technically Zoom, for any of questions that you guys have, and also another link for our survey as well, just so that we know how we can improve in the future. So thank you, everybody. But if you have any questions, we'll stay on so that you can ask them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess a lot of these folks probably walked off and they laughed.
Yeah, like happiness to say thank you, and then they sign out.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
There's still some in, so I'm just like looking. There's still about 30 guests in here. I did not see the total. I was not paying attention.
Yeah, I think it was like 80 something at one time.
80.
Yeah, I think it was close to like 90 something at one point.
Good
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
So what you think? How was it, Grace? What did I do?
It was really good. Yeah. No, I very much enjoyed it. It was I think it was similar to what you did at the Ross one.
Mhm.
But definitely good information, and I love how engaging it is too, with the chat as well. And I think that everyone very much enjoys it. So
Well,
killer as always.
Thank you, Crystal.
I'm going
and
to
Crystal agrees.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we got a question.
Mia has a question.
All right. Question for Jay. How do you authentically address coworkers? Ooh. Ooh. Okay. The question is, this is a good one too. How do you authentically address coworkers who don't understand the trauma caused by white people using the N-word? This is a tricky one, primarily because we live in okay, let me say it like this. Generational divide has has did something interesting with the N-word, just to be transparent. So it once was a pure point in time where only Black people could say the N-word, right? That was a universal concept. I don't think it's like that no more. And one of the reasons why it's not like that is because the relationship between Blacks and whites, especially on the adolescent kid level, is much different than what adults is. So when kids use the N-word, oftentimes when they have relationships with Black people, it's not meant it's not Nigger, it's Nigga. You know what I'm saying? So even that is a huge definition. So I think when you're talking about, first I'm gonna address from the kid level. When you're talking about kids using it and intermingling the words within their races, then that's touchy because it's hard for an adult to enforce something when the kids is like, that's my and the white guys is like, that's my and they hear it in the music and they're just repeating it. So it's not laced in malice or racism or bigotry. It's just basically a culture connection, and the word is similar to bruh and everything else what you use. Is it right? Is it wrong? I get it. Now, when we're talking about specifically dealing with adults that don't really understand the impact of the N word, then that's a whole nother entity. Because if you're dealing with a full grown adult that don't really understand the nuances of having to navigate the N word, then to me, that's similar between somebody calling your girlfriend babe. It's like certain words or certain terms you only know to use within certain environments. So, how do you authentically address it with a coworker? I can start with that. First, I think, again, using the dish model, disclaimer, listen, I don't really know how to address this. It's uncomfortable for me on so many levels because I know you hear it on TV. White people, everybody kind of uses it in music. So I just want to lean into and let you know that this is uncomfortable for me. Even having this conversation as a Black person is extremely uncomfortable for me. And you may be uncomfortable too. And then I have to look inward and be like, okay, what am I trying to accomplish by this? Am I coming from a place that I want to tell you about yourself because you ain't got no damn business? That's but I have to check that in myself because if not, it'll come off as hostility. And if it come off as hostility, the first thing the person's going to do is they're going to retreat. They're going to be like, man, I did not mean I, la, 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 and they're going to shut down. So check yourself. The second one is just to share how you feel about it. Like this whole dish model, like share, like, listen, this is my experience. And then that last one is hold space for the person. Like hold that space and say, hey, like, how do you really feel? And don't try to solve it in one interaction. And I would definitely have somebody else present for that meeting too, if it's in a professional, namely a supervisor. So the authenticity part is tricky with this because if you're emotionally charged by it, being upset and authentic don't always go together because that come off as a pissed Black person. So I think when you're talking about addressing coworkers who don't understand the trauma caused by white people using the N-word, I think the first part is that sometimes in this society that a lot of people don't even understand trauma and the N-word connection because they're not looking at the Nigger word. They're looking at the my Nigga. And that's the word of endearment. Is not really. Now, when you're talking about little white racist kids and they're going back and forth saying it, then to me, that's a disciplinary issue that needs to be addressed with the administration on down about words and terms that are appropriate publicly in the school. But if these kids are just going back and forth, then it's hard to get into kids stuff. But if you're talking about policies from educate from a school board on down, then that's something that you have to deal with that. So I think it's two different ways to approach it. One, obviously, you want the policy say, hey, nobody uses this word from a policy enforcement. Black kids, like we don't want to hear this. But now when you're talking about kids intermingling with each other, then that's a very slippery slope. You know what I'm saying? It's being used on sports teams with majority of white kids and being used in negative ways to point out the Black students that are upset. Yes, so now it becomes a term of endearment to a word of hatred, and then you're dealing with. So if this is an issue systemically for the school, then yes, I will approach it from the school on down with some training and some broader conversations. But if it's just the kids interacting, then the adults have to hold the kids responsible for that language. And if the adults hear these kids making fun of Black kids or Black kids calling white kids the C word, then I think the policy should be, hey, if we hear y'all saying this, y'all won't be on this football field or y'all won't be doing this sports anymore because we don't tolerate that. So I think it's a different approach based on the scenario. It's not a one size fits all, and it's not something that can be easily solved. But I think with the right collaborative collaborative conversation and some transparency, some openness, then I think you can at least move the needle or get people. I think that if you get people to understand the historical aspect of the word, but also understand the current application of the word based on culture and language, then I think you can probably make some progress, but I think it'll be slow. But I think over time that you can make some shift and hopefully feel better about it. I hope I help, because I use the word all the time, just to be real. But I use it around white folks sometimes, and I call white people it sometimes when they make me mad. I do, because to me the N word ain't about color; it's an attitude.
That part, yes, I completely agree as well.
Yeah, it's like you acting like I tell like so. Yeah, so that was good. See, we need to have trainings like this.
Yeah.
Y'all might get shut down. They might not fund it, but we need to have a training like this. I can see the
So
administration now, like, I'm not funding that. You got a grant out for the N-word training.
I think with history, so like being in the school, history is being like policy wise, it's like being redone at the district level a lot. So kids are not getting that education about like the history of the N word and being
Right,
like, you
right,
know what, maybe I don't want to use this because I don't want to hurt, like aware of it. Like some people just think it's a word,
right.
and there's layers.
There's so
But
many
I
different
think
layers.
I had added in like I think there's a layer of parent education as well.
Oh, yeah.
um, I don't know if the parents you're working with are super young and maybe they are also in the same mindset, um, and all the stuff. So like there's layers to this, but I completely agree with you, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, if y'all ever decide to do a training on that, if y'all can get somebody to fund it, it might be the last training we do. But don't call me if it's the last one. I'm gonna pass. But thank y'all so much. Thank you all. It was great. Always working. If y'all have anything else y'all need of me, I'm at your service. And again, if it's some ways I can get better, if y'all identify something, send me over the evaluation forms, and I try to make sure I make the adaptations that's needed. So thank y'all, y'all family. Now we working together.
Alrighty. Thank you, Jay. Thank you,
So,
everyone else. All right, Grace, next move.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. I will end the webinar for everybody. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
yeah, you too. Bye bye.
Bye.